Hello, welcome to our continuing devotional through 1 Thessalonians. We're currently in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, and now we're going to switch gears for a large part all the way through the end of chapter 4 and into chapter 5, because now Paul's going to begin to speak about events related to what we call the end times. Events related to death, the return of Jesus, the signs and indicators and the characteristics of what we call the end day. So this is a lengthy session. We certainly won't cover it all in one 5-minute devotional. So we're just going to simply break it down verse by verse and go section by section. Let's start with 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verse 13, which says this: "But we do not want you to be uninformed, brothers, about those who are asleep, that you may not grieve as others do who have no hope." So he wants Christians to be fully instructed, fully knowledgeable about matters of the end times, about matters of what we call the eternal state. That's why he starts off by saying, we don't want you to be uninformed. We don't want you to be ignorant. When you don't understand what's going on, you're more likely to give in to fear or despair or defeat. All those things are connected to spiritual ignorance. If you're in a plane and an airplane and it's in the air and it makes noises or it makes moves that you are not familiar with, you may be fearful. But if you know that that's all perfectly part of the process of the flight, if you're not ignorant, if you're informed, you're more likely to have peace instead of fear. Well, that's what it is in regard to death. That's the eternal state. That's what it is in regard to end times. Christians need to be fully instructed, fully informed about matters of the end times and the eternal state so that we're not fearful, despairing, bitter, frustrated, anxious, or anything of that nature. We also learn in this verse that Christians should have a different and a far better perspective on death than the world. I mean, look at how he describes death here in verse 13. He says, "I don't want you to be uninformed, brothers, about those who are asleep." The Bible repeatedly uses the euphemism asleep or sleep as for the word death or died. And I think the reason for that is because when you go to sleep, that's a temporary condition. That's a substitute word that's used to convey a truth. Now, when I say that when we die, we go to sleep, I don't mean what's sometimes taught, which is a false doctrine called soul sleep, that simply when you die, you have no conscious existence until the final physical resurrection. That's contrary to what the Bible teaches. The Bible, for instance, in the Gospels, when the thief repented, Jesus told him, "This day you will be with me in paradise." He wasn't going to be in an unconscious state of existence. He was going to be with Jesus. To be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord, the Bible tells us. But by using the word asleep, he's conveying to us that our perspective on death should be far, far different than the world. There shouldn't be this kind of sense, well, that's it. It's over. They're done. They passed away. It's over. No, in the biblical perspective for Christians, they haven't passed away. They passed on to a far better existence. They went from one kind of existence to a far better kind of existence. We want to be very careful here that we don't give in to the hopelessness and the grief that comes with that mindset. That's why he says at the end of verse 13, I want you to not be ignorant about those who are asleep, that you may not grieve as others who do not have hope. Please understand here, this is not some kind of correction or rebuke against Christians who grieve the death of a loved one. Death is a grievous thing. It's terrible to be separated from somebody that you love because of death. The difference for the Christian is not that they grieve less, it's that they grieve, but they don't do so without hope. They grieve, but also with the understanding that one day, as we'll see at the end of this chapter, one day they're going to be together with the Lord and they're going to be together with their loved ones who are Christians. So it's a hopeful grief instead of a hopeless grief. So this is how Paul starts off, but he hasn't given any details yet about what happens when Jesus returns, what happens for those who have died previously, what happens for those who are still alive. All of that's coming up in the next few verses. But I hope you consider this and be encouraged by this, that Christians, our death should be looked at differently. We should have a different perspective. It's a temporary condition. It's like sleep. It's going from one kind of existence to a far better kind of existence. Let's not be ignorant so that we're not like those who are in the world who grieve without hope. But we have a hopeful grief, even regarding the most difficult thing we may go through the death of a loved one. Have a blessed day.